One of the best ways to keep your head strong while you're going through time in prison is to build really strong ties with society. I've always resisted this message that people get in prison that the best way to serve time is to focus on your reputation and your time in prison and forget about the world outside. When I go into prisons and provide guidance, my message to them is always the same. Anybody who says that the best way to serve time is to forget about the world outside is not your friend. At Prison Professors, we want to be your friend. We want you to come back to society strong, with your dignity intact, and with opportunities to prosper, to recalibrate, to restore confidence, to rebuild your life. And to do that, you want to maintain strong cultural ties and strong community ties, and you want to develop them, right? You want to develop them even more than they existed before. And if you read Earning Freedom, Conquering a 45-year prison sentence, you are going to read about all the strategies that I used to build an exceptionally strong support network that not only empowered me while I was going through 26 years in prison, but also opened opportunities for me to thrive while I was in prison. What do I mean by thrive? It allowed me to get a bachelor's degree. That strategy allowed me to get a master's degree. It allowed me to work as a published author. It allowed me to build a coalition of mentors who came into my life and would visit me, people that I didn't know, professors from universities like Harvard and Princeton and Stanford and the University of Chicago that come in to visit me and open opportunities for me to publish with them, which eventually led to me finding the love of my life while I was in prison and getting married inside of a prison visiting room. I've been married now for 22 years, and Carol and I work together on this kind of personal ministry to change the system. It allowed me to stay close contacts with my mom and my dad, my two sisters. It allowed me to build a pathway so that when I came home, I could say with confidence that I'll make my first $1 million within 5 years of getting out of prison, even though I was in prison for 26 years. That doesn't happen unless you focus on nurturing community ties and building those strong community ties. Now I strive to share all of those lessons with other people going into the system, but that starts by really understanding what are the vehicles or mechanisms that you could use to strengthen your community ties while you're serving your time in prison. Okay, I'm going to tell you, there's not very many, right? There's the U.S. Postal Service, which is guaranteed by the U.S. Constitution, right? You have a right to use the mail and to communicate the regular mail. Unfortunately, because of a lot of contraband in prisons, it's restricted in some ways, right? Sometimes in some prisons, they will not allow you to get an actual letter from home. Instead, your family sends the letter to the institution. The institution opens the letter, scans the letter, and it shows it to you over some type of a tablet or some type of electronic device. But it's still communication. Your job is not to complain about how difficult things are, but rather, how can you use the tools around you to overcome the many obstacles that exist in prison? You have to expect obstacles and then create a pathway to succeed anyway. Now, if you're communicating with anybody in your network, family or friends or employers or people that are not considered special mail, then you should anticipate that all of that mail will be read. It's all going to be censored. So I would never write anything from prison that you don't expect a government official to read. That goes for both what you're sending out, but also for what's coming in. Now, that the only exception to that, and I would still be questionable about whether there's that big of an exception, is something that's called special mail or legal mail. So if you're writing to your defense attorney regarding your case, or you're writing to a member of the media, or if you're writing to a member of Congress, that's considered special mail. Now, to use special mail, you've got to mark it very specifically on the envelope that identifies it as special mail. And there are very clear guidelines for that. So I would encourage you, look at the Code of Federal Regulations or the handbook for the institution where you're serving your sentence, if that's important for you to keep your mail confidential. That's special mail. Mail that's not going to an attorney, the media, or Congress, maybe religious services, I'm not sure, is considered special mail. Everything else is regular mail, and you should expect it to be, overseen by the staff. Now, second, you have access to the telephone unless you've been blocked from the telephone, but you have a limited amount of time. It used to be unlimited when I started my sentence. Then it was reduced to 300 minutes. Recently, thanks to the new leadership in the Bureau of Prisons, they've just increased it to more than 500 minutes. And I know that they are working to try and increase it further because communication is so important for people in prison with people in society. But you should expect all phone calls are monitored, again, unless it's special. And to get a special phone call with an attorney that's unmonitored, you should expect to go through a lot of hurdles. But it is possible. Just read in the Code of Federal Regulations. If you're using the prisonvestors.org website, use our artificial intelligence chatbot, because I've written a lot about that on how you could qualify for special mail, legal phone calls, and so on and so forth. So you've got to be very disciplined on your telephone calls because of the limited amount of time that you have to use the phone every month. Now, there is also an email system for people in prison. Some people might be restricted from using it. I hope that's not you, but we will. We're always working to expand communication channels at our nonprofit. But you should know the email system in prison is not quite the same as what you're used to outside. It's a quasi-email system known as Core Links for people who are outside and True Links for people who are inside. But it's very much like email. It's just that it goes to a centralized location, and your family or loved ones have to go to that centralized location to retrieve the email you sent. Still, it is relatively quick. When I say relatively, instead of waiting for several days for the U.S. Postal Service to deliver the mail, email is typically within a couple of hours, sometimes 10 minutes or so. But all messages you should expect are monitored and screened for security. I don't think they allow you to send attachments or images or things of that sort. Some prisons may have that, and I know that they're moving toward tablets, but that might be at least a year away. I'm filming this in 2025. I would not expect to see tablets before mid to 26 to maybe 2027. So you want to make sure that you use these different services to connect. Of course, visits are super important. But in order to visit, there is a process where you've got to get the family member or friend approved in advance, and they have to go through a relatively simple background check. Having a criminal conviction doesn't necessarily preclude you from being able to visit inside of the prison. I would say as long as you have already completed your obligation to the agency and you're free, and you can pass what's called an NCIC check that staff members will do. During the visits, they're typically contact visits, but there's not a lot of affection that you can show during the visits, like a handshake, a brief hug at the start and the end of the visit. But you should expect to find discipline if you show too much affection to your spouse or your loved one, or really even your children. There are no conjugal visits in prison. Higher security prisons may require you to visit through glass and a video monitoring, but there may be restrictions on how much time you can spend in the visiting room every month. So I wrote a lot about that in Earning Freedom. Again, I would encourage you to get to know the rules of your specific institution, because these rules change depending on the administrators in the prison. Visiting time is typically from 9 in the morning until 3 in the afternoon. Some prisons 8 in the morning till 3 in the afternoon. Some prisons have visiting afternoon visits from 1 in the afternoon until 8 o'clock in the evening or so. But there's always going to be restrictions, particularly in prisons that are located in very densely populated areas like Los Angeles or New York or Miami, where there's going to be a lot of people visiting. But visits I found to be very helpful. I was very fortunate to have visits from my family, and Carol would visit me every opportunity she'd get. So it made time a lot easier for me, and I would hope that you use visits as well, if that's consistent with your adjustment strategy. Practical tips for your family members when they're going to communicate with you in prison: let them know that everything is going to be recorded. They're not going to allow any type of photographs that they think are inappropriate. They're not going to allow your family to visit if they wear inappropriate clothing. So just kind of think like you're going to a Sunday church, or dress that way, and you won't have any problems, because the real goal is to stay connected with society. And I would use these connections to build more opportunities for you on the other side of the journey. It's one of the reasons I really encourage you to use all the resources at prisonprofessors.org, particularly building a profile that will help you build an advocacy campaign and find more people who will advocate for you. You've got to create the resources that help those people help you. And I never ask you to do anything I didn't do. I show you how I did it. Don't charge anybody a penny for this work. If you need guidance, go to those free webinars that Justin Paperny offers at whitecollaradvice.com/nonprofit. They're free. You could ask questions. You could learn how to help yourself. You have to be the CEO of your life. And to be the CEO of your life, define success. And success is coming home at the soonest possible time with your dignity intact and with opportunities to prosper. I believe in you. Make sure that you subscribe to our newsletter at prisonprofessors.org. And follow us on social so I can keep you up to date on the work we're doing to open more pathways and mechanisms for people to earn freedom through merit. Please do your part by avoiding disciplinary infractions in prison and focusing on developing a pathway that shows you are the CEO of your life, and you're going to be successful. I believe in you.